Good evening, class. It's Rodney Canty. Discussion for today, we were to discuss Toomer's representation of the South in African American culture. I feel like Toomer is initially saying that the South, much like the African American culture, is behind, in his opinion, because the story initially begins in the segregated South with sugarcane and cotton fields. There are a lot of sexual references, illegitimate children, and there's even segregation and discrimination due to skin complexion. The second topic was Hughes and Schuler compare and contrast these two writers' perspective on African Americans' identity and art. Well, in Hughes, the Negro artist and the racial mountain, I saw evidence of double consciousness from the narrator, especially when the narrator says, I want to be a poet, but not a Negro poet. This to me shows that the narrator already sees the separation between African American and Euro American, how one is up here while one is down here. And if I just so happen to choose to be Euro American, my rise to fame or my class level will increase drastically, versus if I was to go be a Negro poet, I wouldn't make any progress. Now Schuler was kind of the complete opposite. He felt that he disagreed with the term of African American art, and he felt that it has little to do with African Americans because the whites were privileged way before, and the amount of white influence is surpass any embellishments that the African Americans can make. So basically he says that there's no African American art because to him the whites were privileged way before the African Americans. So they laid the basis and the foundation for what was to come in the future. So anything that was made after that was just simply add-ons of what the whites had already did. How might each of these authors view Osceola's choice in the blues I'm playing? Well, Hughes would be I feel like Hughes would be proud because Osceola saw the best of both worlds. You know, she was traveling. She was able to receive money at one point, seeing the situation that she had come from in the beginning. She was now living a much better life. But in the end, when it all came down to her, she wanted to stick to what she knew best, and which was jazz. This is where her and Miss Ellsworth started to have these discriminations, where Miss Ellsworth wanted to play Euro-American music, which was the classical, and Osceola wanted to play the African American music, which was jazz. She didn't quite grasp Mrs. Ellsworth didn't quite grasp the concept of jazz, and she didn't like it. This was also evident when they started having differences on talking about Pete. Osceola loved him. She wanted to be with him, but Mrs. Ellsworth couldn't seem to wrap her head around why she was so infatuated with this man. Which goes back to Hughes saying, you know, stay culturally centered. Do not lose your initial identity. If you're African American, be proud to be African American, and that's what Osceola did. Schuler, however, I feel like he would be kind of upset because you have this one African American who had this Caucasian lady in her life, and this Caucasian lady, like I said, was showing her the best of both worlds, and she had the choice to once again do something Euro-American or African-American, and she stuck to African-American, which was the jazz, which was what caused the final separation, plus the marriage with Pete, between her and Mrs. Ellsworth. How relevant are these ideas in the relationship between Euro and African-American culture today? Well, these ideas are still very relevant to the Euro and African-American culture today because, like I've said, the Euro Americans are becoming more fond of the African American culture, but are still not as fond as the individual than the culture. So to me, the things that are going on in those stories are still occurring today, but they just may be in a different shape, form, or fashion, i.e. Ferguson. You know, i.e. a lot of things that are going on as of lately, and it's things in your personal life now that you can relate to after reading these stories. Thank you.